Warning: this video contains flashing lights.
Bruh. Oh my goodness. When I say I knew it was bad, like I knew it was bad. I never knew it was this bad. I never expected it to get this bad.
Open borders for Israel! 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 Seek help! Seek help! Seek help! Blood! 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 Blood!
Why am I here? To project my voice.
Jews will not replace us! Jews will not replace us! Replace us! Jews will not replace us! Replace us! Will not replace us! Fuck the Jews! Victory! Fuck the
Have some white babies, Blondie.
Goyim no! The Goyim no! Goyim no! The Goyim no! Jews get the rope!
The Voice of America was launched during World War II to counter Nazi propaganda and was broadcast around the world uninterrupted for 83 years until 2 weeks ago. So what do you think that says to your listeners and viewers?
I think it would make them wonder what the hell is going on in the United States.
Every time I find one of these lunatics, I take away their visa.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
This is unbelievable. The real lunatic here is Marco Rubio, who's trampling on people's First Amendment rights. And it's absolutely shameful that somebody who says his family came to the United States fleeing an authoritarian regime would send hooded agents to disappear people because of controversial speech. Shameful.
Don't you understand that the people who do this thing, who practice racism, are bereft? There is something distorted about the psyche. It's like it's a profound neurosis that nobody examines for what it is. It feels crazy. It is crazy. I take your race away, and there you are, all strung out, and all you got is your little self. And what is that? What are you without racism? Are you any good? Are you still strong? You still smart? You still like yourself? I mean, these are the questions. If you can only be tall because somebody's on their knees, then you have a serious problem. And my feeling is white people have a very, very serious problem. And they should start thinking about what they can do about it.
What is he doing?
Donald Trump's brain is broken.
I want to take a moment to say thank you to Donald Trump, not out of praise, but out of truth. Because while you rip through every part of this government, tearing down justice, equality, and fairness under the fake excuse of fighting DEI fraud, what you're really doing is confirming what black folks have been saying for generations. America was built on racism, fueled by fear and sustained by white supremacy. You've exposed it all. The masks are off. The polite racism, the fake allyship, the colorblind lies, it's all gone. Now we see it raw and unfiltered. You're not just targeting policy, you're targeting people. Black people, brown people, marginalized communities. And the wild part, we make up the smallest portion of this country, yet somehow we are the biggest threat to the lie that white supremacy built. That should tell you everything. You're afraid not of violence, not of replacement, but of the power we hold even when we have nothing. You see the way our culture, our brilliance, our resilience, our excellence continues to shape this country, even when it tries to erase us. Donald Trump is just the loudest version of a system that's always been in place. He is the living, breathing proof that this country was never designed with us in mind. And yet, we continue to define it. So thank you, Donald, for exposing what so many tried to deny, for showing the world that the fear of black greatness is real, for proving that racism isn't in our imagination, it's in the fabric of this nation. And to my people, we don't have to fight to prove our worth. He's doing that for us. All we have to do is stand firm, stay awake, and know that the truth is finally louder than the lie. We are not broken. We are not the problem. We are the evidence of the power that this country can contain. Let that truth ring louder than his hate.
Donald Trump's brain is broken. We see it deteriorate more and more every day, and you would expect that the political party who spent the last 4 years calling for cognitive tests of Joe Biden, who was having a successful presidency, would have some concern with the man destroying our government through his own stupidity, his own dumbness. But no, MAGA is letting Donald Trump run free and run us straight into the ground. But the signs are there that things aren't working.
I love Tesla.
So many electric vehicles, nobody wants to buy them.
I love Tesla.
Good luck with your electric car that goes for about 45 minutes.
I love Tesla.
You want electric vehicles, we'll give it to you when the damn things don't go far enough and they're too expensive.
I love Tesla.
We have a thing called the gasoline. We have gasoline.
I love Tesla.
They got some basic problems. They're very expensive and they don't go far. I think they want to keep you somewhere around your home. They don't want to build highways or something. They got some crazy plan.
I love Tesla.
Uh-oh, retard alert. Retard alert, class.
Obama, it was reported today, played 250 rounds of golf. Because he doesn't have enough time because he's playing so much golf.
Obama ought to get off the golf course and get down there.
He played more golf last year than Tiger Woods. Guy plays more golf than people on the PGA Tour. We're going to have a crash, and we're going to have a crash like a 1929 crash if she gets in. You saw a gentleman yesterday who got up, one of the top analysts in the world, frankly, and said that if Trump isn't elected, he predicts, and he's predicting you have a stock market crash like 1929. One of the top analysts in the world, frankly, and said that if Trump isn't elected, he predicts, and he's predicting you have a stock market crash like 1929. Then in 1929, it all came to a very abrupt end with the Great Depression, and it would have never happened if they had stayed with the tariff policy. It would have been a much different story. They tried to bring back tariffs to save our country, but it was gone. It was gone. It was too late. Nothing could have been done. It took years and years to get out of that depression.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the the Great Depression, passed the the tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which raised or raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression.
From the day of my election, the stock market went up in my first term 88%, with NASDAQ going up 155%, more than any president has ever had in any term in office, by far. And I think we're going to blow that away, and maybe the numbers won't show, but I think they're going to show much better than even those numbers.
So let's cross back to Professor Scott Lucas, Professor of US and International Politics. Scott, we spoke to you a little bit earlier. Now that we've heard what the detail is from Donald Trump, what do you make of all of that?
Before talking about the effects, and they're bad, let me just say that I think that was the dumbest, most economically illiterate speech I have heard in my life. And I've heard a lot of bad ones. It was filled with lies and distortions. And I need to back that up. For example, the idea that the European Union has a 39% tariff rate on the United States. The weighted average of EU tariffs on the U.S. is 1%. Japan, which supposedly, according to Trump, had a 46% tariff rate, the weighted average of tariffs on U.S. products is 3.2%. Marcus Peterson, who was excellent, highlighted the fact that other countries which actually have high tariff rates, like Turkey, all of a sudden get favored treatment from Trump, at least relatively favored, by paying only 10%. What you had was someone who is the President of the United States speaking almost absolute nonsense. And the biggest nonsense of all was the idea that tariffs can replace income taxes and that they will lead to economic growth. They won't. Now, how bad is this? You have varying rates across the board. You have 20% on the EU. You have 34% on China, even higher on some countries. Lowest rates are still only going to be, are still at least 10%. The Aston Business School modeled this, and earlier this week came out and said, in the event of a 20 to 25% U.S. tariff, and we're roughly talking about that across the board, if the EU and other countries retaliate, the loss to the global economy will be 1.4 trillion. That is trillion with a T, dollars to the global economy. The tax burden, effective tax burden on the U.S. taxpayers will be $6 trillion with a T. This is one of the most, in addition to being economically illiterate speeches, it is accompanied by one of the most economically damaging actions that have been taken since the last round of high tariffs, which was in the 1930s, which helped lead to the Great Depression.
The Heard and McDonald Islands got slapped with a 10% tariff. Those are uninhabited islands. There are penguins on those islands, but there are no people. We also got a tariff of 10% on the British Indian Ocean Territory. The only people there are U.S. and U.K. service members at a military base called Diego Garcia. Just to give you a sense of like how thought through this was, they were like, well, we definitely tariff the penguins.
So Trump, you're deciding to slap tariffs on a remote Antarctic island that is inhabited by penguins. Have you guys seen this? He's holding up a little law book or whatever the fuck picture of his tariffs that he signed because he's slapping it on a remote island in Antarctica that is inhabited by penguins. Now I can understand if he threw some tariffs on the penguin from Batman, that would be different. No. But penguins, penguins that go about their fucking business, that don't know what tariffs are unless penguins have become so smart. They're like, shit, can you believe Donald Trump? I don't know, that's not a good penguin. The Donald Trump tariffs, goddamn, boy, I knew I should have voted for Kamala. This whole thing is silly. He's a fucking clown, dog. This is crazy. Slapping tariffs on a remote island. He's senile, everybody. All of you Trump supporters, he's senile. He's fucking senile. What is wrong with you?
But likewise, an old-fashioned term that we use, groceries. I used it in the campaign. It's such an old-fashioned term, but a beautiful term, groceries. It sort of says a bag with different things in it. Groceries went through the roof. And I campaigned on that. I talked about the word groceries for a lot.
Next minute, he's going to be slapping tariffs on polar bears. I have to get all the animals. I swear to God, the animals they got to pay. They got to pay, especially those penguins and the flamingos. The flamingos, they got to pay too. I'm so sick of them standing on one leg. Now you're going to stand on two legs. What the fuck are we doing? But now, I'm going to tell you guys something. I'm a Trump supporter now. Yeah, I'm a latent Trump supporter now because he's fucking everybody equally in the ass. So I'm supporting him now because that's what you motherfuckers get.
We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more. We're going to win so much you may even get tired of winning and you'll say, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much. And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
So we're all aware of the absolute lunacy that has transpired thus far with tariffs galore, okay? You get a tariff and you get a tariff and you get a tariff. What that relates to is that it's going to screw over the American people, all right? And he said before that when it came to car manufacturers, he's like, he doesn't give a damn. He doesn't care at all. We see the stock market has plummeted, okay, in response to his lunacy of giving everyone tariffs. Tariffs for everyone, all right?
So here's where we're at. The stock market is crashing. 80,000 veterans and their families are at risk of foreclosure due to VA cuts. Our national security is at risk after Donald Trump fired the NSA director, who's also in charge of cybersecurity, after a meeting from conspiracy theorist, 9/11 denier, and all-around hateful person Laura Loomer. The remains of U.S. soldiers who died during a training exercise in Lithuania have just arrived at Dover Air Force Base. Donald Trump refused to show up because instead he was golfing.
All right, listen up. We have seen a lot of disgusting stories over the past 10 days, but I want to make sure this one doesn't fly under the radar because it tells us a lot about Donald Trump's character or lack thereof. We just learned that Trump picked a golf dinner over the dignified transfer of U.S. troops' bodies, and when I dig into the details, you'll find it even more disgusting because, again, over the past 2 weeks or so, we've seen Signalgate, we've seen deportations with no due process, we've seen the stock market massacre and Liberation Day. All of these things are incredibly disgusting, but this deserves some attention of its own. Trump picks golf dinner over dignified transfer of U.S. troops' bodies. And one of the most disgusting parts is, well, there are a lot of disgusting parts, but we had 4 young American soldiers pass away. Sergeant Jose Duenas Jr., Sergeant Edvin Franco, Dante Taitino, Staff Sergeant Troy Knutson Collins all died during a training mission in Lithuania for NATO. And Trump is treating this funeral like they're political operatives or bureaucrats and he can just blow it off, but no. These were service members who gave their lives for the flag that Trump wraps himself in for photo ops and campaign speeches. I mean, these dudes were in their 20s. Some of them were my age, 22 years old, and they served this country with honor. And when their bodies were being returned home, Donald Trump went to golf.
As Jasmine Crockett says, where the hell is Donald Trump? He's in Florida at his country club playing golf with the Saudis, who are sponsoring a golf tournament and paying Donald Trump for it, a violation in normal times of the emoluments clause. Now, the market crashed on Thursday. The market crashed on Friday. Frankly, since Donald Trump's been in office, the market's been crashing massively. But according to the sources of Jesse Waters at Fox, who's very close to Donald Trump, Trump says, quote, I don't give a F. The F word. I don't give an F. That's what Jesse Waters says that Donald Trump was telling people around him. I don't give an F. I don't give an F. Donald Trump is now posting the following from the golf course after he tanked the markets on Friday. In all caps, he posts, only the weak will fail.
We are now in a point in time where you have these MAGA grifters who are trying to spin a possible, perceivable recession as a good thing. I kid you not, bro. I kid you not. They're trying to spin this as like in a favorable light. Like this is a benefit to the country that Trump is destroying the country. But you had this fool talk about, well, I don't even care about my 401k, okay? Not that I shouldn't, but I trust this man that much.
And you know what? I don't really care about my 401k today. You know what? Not that I can afford it. Not that it isn't important. Not that I'm not at a point in my life when I should be worried about my 401k, because I am. But this is what I believe. I believe in this man.
You are a fucking idiot.
Why are we acting like Trump is the end-all be-all? Why are we acting like this man is somehow playing 60 chess? Did y'all not get tired of the L's y'all experienced in the first administration? Like, am I missing something? You guys can't be this stupid to act like you're willing to bet your life on Trump. And that's what people are really doing. They betting their lives on Trump. They destroying their accounts for Trump. Oh, is this winning? You mean I get to pay more? Well, I'm paying more for eggs and gas and everything because of my freedom. Do you understand the mental gymnastics you have to do to try and justify paying more for something as freedom? Like what? This is why people say y'all are in a cult, because everything you say is very cult-like.
And, you know, the uncertainty in the stock market, it isn't necessarily a negative. What? It can be an indication that things are going to work out. It's just that they're uncertain right now.
Hi, I'm with Toys for Tots, asking if anybody would like to donate any old vibrators or old dildos. That way we can give them to all the bitches who need to go fuck themselves.
These people have lost the plot, bruh. This is how we know that you're in a cult, because you can't criticize the cult leader. They could be in hell, literal hell, with Satan right next to them, and they will try and spin this. Well, you know what? You want to know what we're not getting? Frostbite. I'll tell you that. We're not getting frostbite here. As a matter of fact, I'm getting a lovely tan. Also, I think Trump is leading us in the correct direction. That's why I will say. Damn. But you have Benny Johnson, bro. He is coming out with the strongest cope that I've seen, bro. This man, he must be injecting cope into his veins, just like straight into the bloodstream. He comes out and starts saying, what is money, right? Who cares about money? You win money, you lose money, all right? You know, losing money is a good thing. I kid you.
Losing money costs you nothing. This is just the reality of life. You're gonna, like, were you young and dumb? How much money did you lose? Everyone loses money.
I'm retarded?
Bro, I kid you not. He tried to spin that losing money is a good thing, bro. He says that it builds character.
Everyone loses money. It costs you nothing. In fact, it builds quite a bit of character. In fact, you learn a lot of lessons, actually, by losing money. Losing your character costs you everything. Losing your country costs you everything. There are things you can't get back. The government can print more money, and it will. Sadly, that's just the reality.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
You've heard Trump's promise. I'm going to be a dictator for one day. History shows there are no one-day dictatorships. When democracies fall, they typically fall completely. In a previous video, I laid out the defining traits of fascism and how MAGA Republicans embody them. But how could Trump, or someone like him, actually turn America into a fascist state? Here's how, in 5 steps. Step number 1, use threats of violence to gain power. Hitler and Mussolini relied on their vigilante militias to intimidate voters and local officials. We watched Trump try to do the same in 2020.
Right,
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by.
Republican election officials testified to the threats they faced when they refused Trump's demands to falsify the election results.
My email, my cell phone was doxxed.
They have had video panel trucks with videos of me proclaiming me to be a pedophile.
A 20-something tech in Gwinnett County today has death threats and a noose put out saying he should be hung for treason.
If the election is close, threats to voters and election officials could be enough to sabotage it. Step number 2, consolidate power. After taking office, a would-be fascist must turn every arm of government into a tool of the party. One of Hitler's first steps was to take over the civil service, purging it of non-Nazis. In October of 2020, Trump issued his own executive order that would have enabled him to fire tens of thousands of civil servants and replace them with MAGA loyalists. He never got to act on it, but he's now promising to apply it to the entire civil service.
We will pass critical reforms making every executive branch employee fireable.
That's become the centerpiece of something called Project 2025, a presidential agenda assembled by MAGA Republicans that would, as the AP puts it, dismantle the U.S. government and replace it with Trump's vision. Step 3, establish a police state. Hitler used the imaginary threat of the poison of foreign races to justify taking control of the military and police, placing both under his top general and granting law enforcement powers to his civilian militias. Now Trump is using the same language.
It's poisoning the blood of our country.
Trump plans to deploy troops within the U.S. to conduct immigration raids and round up what he estimates to be 18 million people who would be placed in mass detention camps while their fate is decided. And even though crime is actually down across the nation, Trump is citing an imaginary crime wave to justify sending troops into blue cities and states against the will of governors and mayors.
You're supposed to not be involved in that. You just have to be asked by the governor or the mayor to come in. The next time, I'm not waiting.
Trump insiders say he plans to invoke the Insurrection Act to have the military crush civilian protests. We saw a glimpse of that in 2020 when Trump deployed the National Guard against peaceful protesters outside the White House. And with promises to pardon January 6 criminals and stop prosecutions of right-wing domestic terrorists, Trump would empower groups like the Proud Boys to act as MAGA enforcers. Step 4, jail the opposition. In classic dictatorial fashion, Trump is now openly threatening to prosecute his opponents.
If I happen to be president and I see somebody who's doing well and beating me very badly, I say, go down and indict them. They'd be out of the election.
And he's looking to remake the Justice Department into a tool for his personal vendettas.
As we completely overhaul the Federal Department of Justice and FBI, we will also launch sweeping civil rights investigations into Marxist local district attorneys.
In the model of Hitler and Mussolini, Trump describes his opponents as subhuman.
The radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country.
Step number 5, undermine the free press. As Hitler well understood, a fascist needs to control the flow of information. Trump has been attacking the press for years.
They are truly the enemy of the people.
And he's threatening to punish news outlets whose coverage he dislikes. He has helped to reduce trust in the media to such a historic low that his supporters now view him as their most trusted source of information. Within a democracy, we may often have leaders we don't like, but we have the power to change them at the ballot box and through public pressure. Once fascism takes hold, those freedoms are gone and cannot easily be won back. We must recognize the threat of fascism when it appears and do everything in our power to stop it.
History of America is the history of rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown. It starts in the colonies of what would become the United States. Let's remember, during the colonial period, mid-1600s, there was no such thing as white people. I know some people who are now called white find that shocking, right? Because they think whiteness is real, right? But whiteness was created. Europeans didn't call themselves white. We didn't call ourselves white. We weren't all members of one big happy family. Are you kidding? Have you studied the history of Europe? The history of Europe was about killing each other. That's what we did in Europe. We just killed each other before we figured out there were other people to kill. We just killed each other, right? I mean, that was the history of Europe. The English hated the Irish, right? Northern Italians didn't even think that Southern Italians were Italians. The Germans hated everybody, and everybody hated their ass right back, right? There was no team called white, no race called white, but all of a sudden, in the middle of the 1600s, there was. Why? Why was it suddenly necessary to create this thing called the white race? Well, because rich people can count, that's why. And so rich folks looked around, the ones that owned all the land, you know, in the colonies, the colonial elite looked around and they realized something, that they were heavily outnumbered by African enslaved folks, by European indentured servants who were just one level above a slave, or other Europeans who weren't technically indentured servants, but they were still peasants, didn't have any money, didn't have any land, and they could do the math. They added it up and they were like, damn, we got to figure out a way to split these folks apart from one another or they're going to rise up and take our stuff, right? Because after a while, these black folks who were enslaved Africans and these quote unquote white folks who were poor Europeans are going to figure out they're all getting played by these rich people, right? So ultimately the rich figure out they got to come up with some way to get somebody in that group on their team. The easiest thing is to get the poor Europeans, right? Because at least they look like you. They sort of share some of the customs and the culture. So they all of a sudden create this thing called whiteness and they say, now you're part of the club. Now we're going to let you testify in court, enter into contracts, vote, at least if you're a man, own a little bit of land, at least if you're a man, right? And we're going to get rid of indentured servitude. No more of that because you're too good for that. And we're going to take the white men, now called white men, and put them on the slave patrol to keep black people in line. Give them a horse and a gun and a badge and make them feel big and powerful, right? They're still poor. They still don't have anything. They didn't pay the slave patrol well, right? Just exploited them, used them as a buffer between the elite and the other poor folks, particularly poor folks of color. And pretty soon the rebellions that occasionally happened where black and white got together to overthrow the elite, those stopped because the divide and conquer had begun to work, right? You could turn people against each other by telling those poor white folks, they got to keep these black people in line. And so that divide and conquer gets initiated in the colonies. Rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown. Fast forward to the Civil War era. And you have, I'm from the South, right? My people, the elite in my part of the country, right, actually announced that the reason they wanted to break away from the Union and possibly go to war with their brothers and sisters to the North was in order to maintain slavery and white supremacy. They said that at the time. We lie about it now. And we say it had nothing to do with that. But of course, at the time, they didn't have any shame about it, so they just said it openly. Right? The vice president of the Confederacy, Alexander Stephens, said that the cornerstone of the new government was the great truth that the Negro was not the equal of the white man. So that's the reason the Confederacy was formed and existed. But here's the trick. If I'm rich and I want to go to war to protect my ownership in other human beings, my property, but you're poor and you don't own any enslaved people, why the hell would you go fight to protect my stuff? Because I'm a rich person. I'm not going to fight. Rich people don't go to war. Right? Rich people get poor people to go to war for them, whether it's in 1860 or whether it's during the 1960s or whether it's today, right? Rich folks get doctors to write notes for them that say that they have heel spurs and that's why they can't go to Vietnam. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, you can Google that shit because he's sitting in the White House right now, right? Oh, I can't go fight. I have heel spurs. Send some poor kids to do that for me, please, right? So that's been a long-standing tradition. So the rich have to figure out a way to convince the poor to go fight for them. But that's a hard thing. That's like a hard sell, right? Like how the hell, why would you do that? Why would you go fight to protect my property rights when you don't own anything? The only way you would do it is if that rich person comes to you and says, hey, listen, you gotta go fight because we gotta maintain our way of life because if these people get free, they're gonna take your jobs. No, fool, they already got your job. That's how it works, right? Because if I'm white and I got to charge you $1 a day to work on the farm, but you can get a black person to do it for nothing because you own them, guess who got the job? Free got the job, right? So in a sense, poor white folks would have been better off joining with black folks to overthrow the slave system. That would have raised the wage floor of all working people. But they got tricked by rich white men telling them that their enemies were black and brown. Fast forward to the 1930s. And you have white labor leaders. They're not even the elite, right? The labor leaders are not the elite, but they're the elite within the labor movement. And even they had fallen for it at this point. So they didn't want to integrate their unions. And they would say things like, well, we can't have black people and Mexicans and Chinese folks in our unions because if we do that, it's going to reduce the professionalism of our craft. We have to maintain the integrity of our profession. No, fool, you need more people in the damn union is what you need. And if you don't let those folks in, guess what happens when you go out on strike? Who is the boss going to use to replace you? They're going to replace you with the very same black and brown folks that you didn't want to work next to, right? And so at the end of and then you're going to blame them for taking your job rather than the white rich dude for giving it to them, right? Divide and conquer. telling not rich white folks that their enemies are black and brown. And now we fast forward to the president. We got the president of the United States becoming president on the basis of that same rhetoric.
Lock him up! Lock him up! Lock him up! Lock him up! Lock him up!
That was one of the thousands of protests in the United States and across the world right now. Hands-off protests against the Trump regime. That was in Concord, New Hampshire. Now we're seeing millions of people in the aggregate in the United States and across the world protesting the Trump regime. That is what Trump is waking up to today as he is once again golfing in Florida. As Americans are out there on the streets protesting, Donald Trump, bunker boy, is golfing away. This was the front page of the Wall Street Journal this morning. Market carnage worsens. You see a straight line basically down. That's the markets crashing right there. And then this photo on the Wall Street Journal, owned by Rupert Murdoch, is a photo of Donald Trump golfing or heading to golf. Trump heads to golf amid tariff turmoil.
Obama, it was reported today, played 250 rounds of golf. Everything's executive order because he doesn't have enough time because he's playing so much golf. Obama ought to get off the golf course and get down there. I'm going to be working for you. I'm not going to have time to go play golf. He played more golf last year than Tiger Woods. That plays more golf than people on the PGA Tour. I love golf. I think it's one of the greats, but I don't have time. If I were in the White House, I don't think I'd ever see Turnberry again. I don't think I'd ever see Doral again. I'm not going to be playing much golf, believe me. If I win this, I'm not going to be playing much golf.
Now, let me give a shout out to a bunch of the other protests taking place, like the protest in Fort Lauderdale. Let's talk about the protests taking place in Germany. Let's talk about the protests in London. We could talk about the protests in Portland, Maine, the protest in Cincinnati, in Buffalo, in Winchester, Virginia, in Columbus, Ohio, in Asheville, North Carolina, in Duluth, Minnesota, in Pennsylvania, in Brussels, Belgium. I could go. There are protests. Obviously, I'm going to be missing cities and countries and locations and towns. But shout out to everyone everywhere protesting the Trump regime. So what's Donald Trump posting while he's golfing right now?
I'm going to be working for you. I'm not going to have time to go play golf.
Demented Donald, they're golfing, saying it ain't going to be easy. Hang tough, everybody, while I inflict and me and Elon Musk inflict pain and suffering.
Mr. President, you met with the chairman.
Somebody said that about me the other day. They said, who doesn't know me very well, they said, you're such a kind person. And I said, say that again. They said, you're a kind person. I said, I've never heard that before. It was a weird statement. I was kind.
It's your fault, Yeah, I said it. Because it is. Stop blaming the stars, the retrograde, your childhood, your ex, your mama, your daddy, Mercury, Pluto, and the damn Wi-Fi. It's you. You f*** up then act like the universe owes you an explanation. You could crash a car into a daycare, injure 2 toddlers, and still be like, they were in the way of my healing journey. You say you're protecting your peace. No, you're protecting your delusion. You don't grow. You change wigs. You don't heal. You hide. You want a man who makes $50,000 a week, but your apartment has an echo. You sleep on a mattress that needs reinflating every 20 minutes, like it's a bouncy house. And you have asthma. You out here telling people you catch pneumonia every January because you're an empath. Do you not hear yourself, ho? You got pneumonia because your blanket is thinner than dollar store tissue paper. You're a menace with a birth chart. Stop memorizing moon phases and try memorizing the word accountability, bitch.
Yeah, no, the humans are having a hard time. You can tell they're trying to make judgment calls.
Why? Because I'm gonna hit you in the fucking face with a skateboard as soon as you say the N-word. Why? Because you can't say it. Niggas. You got it on camera? Did you, Asher? You can't say the N-word, my boy.
Are you happy? Yeah?
Yep.
Why?
Because I'm black.
This has been an awful week for jobless Americans, the economy, the stock market, and yet the president ended it by playing golf.
As the American economy burns, I am happy to report the president successfully completed his 116th round of golf.
The market's bad. Should our president really be on the golf course?
97 rounds of golf. The economy's falling apart.
The economy could enter into another recession. Now, the White House took great care yesterday to make sure the president was barely seen as he headed out on a big golf outing.
Most Americans seem struggling with the economy right now, loss of jobs, and they see a guy out on the golf course all the time.
Our economy is a train off the rails, and this president is busy golfing.
This is the Doral. That's the clubhouse. It's just beautiful. Trump does things first class, and I think that's why the golf world loves him, because he loves the golf world.